Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Um, this unlikable, it's like a Muppet, right? The dude, this is the way it looks like. So I've been waiting to talk about this like since I saw it yesterday. So today is Thursday, some day in July. I think. I mean in September. I don't know what's July. Um, the 19th. I checked my phone. Woke up, my arm's hurting for some reason. I slept on it weird. I'm holding my microphone with my arm, and it's just my shoulder. Um, but anyway, so this guy decided to do this, and I'm going to play it through, and then I'm going to comment on it, and I'll break it down. But you know, it's impossible to figure out what the hell's going on with most of these things. Like this makes no sense, and I'll go through the various ideas of why I think this is happening, but I could be completely off base. I mean, the connection with the divinity always helps because God can show you anything, right? And the ideas just come. That's why. Well, I'll talk about that. I want to make a voiceover because there are a couple of comments I want to get to. Um, why I am able to be right about so many things without really caring about them and not putting all that much effort into them the way other people would. But it's hard to make sense of some of these decisions. And then you're like, what the hell is going on that this guy decided to do this?
Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister, said that the bigger the lie, the faster it will spread. Well, somebody has fabricated a monstrous big lie that Israel had something to do with Charlie Kirk's horrific murder. This is insane. It is false. It is outrageous. Charlie Kirk was a giant, a once-in-a-century talent who defended freedom, defended America, defended our common Judeo-Christian civilization. Charlie loved Israel. He loved the Jewish people. He told me so in a letter that he sent me just a few months ago. One of my greatest joys as a Christian, he said, is advocating for Israel and forming alliances with Jews to protect Judeo-Christian civilization. He encouraged me to make the case directly to the American people about how vital Israel is to U.S. national security. He told me, the Holy Land is so important to my life, it pains me to see support for Israel slip away. Now, if Charlie disagreed with a policy of mine or a decision here and there, not only did I not mind, I welcomed it. This is the essence of Charlie. This is the essence of a free country. It's exactly what Charlie stood for. And I knew that his suggestions always came from the heart, from his love for Israel and from his love for the Jewish people. A few weeks before his death, I spoke to Charlie. I invited him to visit Israel again. And sadly, that won't happen. Now some are peddling these disgusting rumors, perhaps out of obsession, perhaps with Qatari funding. What I do know is this: Charlie Kirk was a great man, and a great man deserves honor, not lies. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. May your memory be a blessing.
All right. So that was something, right? Holy shit. All right. So the first part about this is, why are you doing this, bro? Like, why are you doing this? Like it. So he came to America, and I covered this, and he was interviewed by Greta Van Susteren, who's now on Newsmax, one of those things. She used to be on Fox. And she was like, I don't even want to ask this because I don't believe it at all. But, there's people that say that Israel had something to do with Charlie's death. And so on Newsmax, that was enough of a thing that people think that she had to ask that question. And I'm sure he was prepped because he had an answer. And he said some weird stuff, like, is Israel responsible for the moon turning and, all these things. Because he's a weird dude. He's very unlikable. And, he had to answer that question. Or maybe he wanted to answer that question. But that should have been it. You do one denial. Because the more you deny something, the more you look guilty. It's just the way it is. The more you have to deny something because, you know, in reality, you shouldn't have to answer for something you didn't do. When you don't do something, people end up getting guilty, feeling guilty for something they didn't do because people accuse them of it, right? And, maybe there's a past life connection to that where they maybe did something in a past life and then they're being accused of this life. There could be something like that. I don't know. But you guys have felt it. If enough people are accusing you of something, you feel like you have to defend yourself and you fucking don't, right? Like you really don't have to defend yourself for something you didn't do and probably didn't think about. Like, let's say you never thought about doing what they accused you of doing. And then you have to defend yourself. So, and then you get into this panic state where you're desperately trying to convince people. And it just makes you look guiltier and guiltier. Especially if you're an unlikable dude like this, right? Then so people who actually do things, they pretend to be angry. They get angry at, they get angry. Oh, I'm so angry that you accuse me of that, right? And, the proper response is just to be like, I didn't do that, don't bring that to my door, right? Don't, whatever's going on with you, it's going on with you. It has nothing to do with me. Whatever fucking weird shit that's going on in your brain or your system, I don't want any part of it, right? And you move on. But the more you talk about it, then all the people start researching it, right? You bring in attention to an idea. Like, let's say people aren't satisfied with the official story. And so then they start looking into Israel, possibly being a part of this. And then they start finding videos and the rest of it. And so I've covered this over the last couple of days that Israel has the biggest motive of anybody. Of course, Trump as well. I mean, Trump and Israel. But Israel, because of their relationship with Charlie Kirk going south. Like, Trump could have found somebody else to get rid of to distract from. Charlie Kirk was probably the best option for them. But the big winners, and I got some more stuff today on Trump. I want to make this video shorter because my video yesterday was 3 hours. And I got more stuff to do today. But let's go through the thing, right? So you've made this decision, and I don't know why. Like, is Israel and America going to go through a breakup? Is this part of some scripted thing we don't know about? Are you being pressured are there so many people thinking it's Israel? Like, maybe a lot more people thinking that it's Israel than we know about. Like, why did you feel motivated to do this? Like, this is a public service announcement. And this is for Americans, right? He's not talking he's saying this to Americans because he knows they need American support. This isn't about people in Israel. People in Israel don't give a shit about Charlie Kirk. He's not trying to save himself politically in Israel. They're going through this, this invasion of Gaza, and they're going to ride this motherfucker till it comes out the other side. There's lots of people in Israel that do not agree with the treatment of the Palestinian people. There's a liberal group, and they're not going to be able to grab power during this time of, it's just they'll be killed if they were able to, they can't fuck up this war and this plan to annex Gaza, or the Gaza Strip. And so let's start here.
Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister, said that the bigger the lie, the faster it will spread.
So the first thing that he comes out of the gate, he brings up the Holocaust, right? Which I think I'm not the only person that's tired of hearing that shit. I don't want any more Holocaust movies. I'm free to not watch them, but it's overkill. And, I think that the Holocaust card is pretty much, especially with the young people today, all they know about is the way Israel's treating Palestine. I think more and more people don't want to hear about the Holocaust. And so you're leading with Joseph Goebbels. Joseph Goebbels has nothing to do with Charlie Kirk. And so this has nothing to do with, but it has always had something to do with this. People hating Jewish people, right? The Jew hate that exists in America and across the world. So that always is going to play a factor in something like this. But in terms of the overall factor, you're conducting a genocide. So, very similar to, like, they want to make the Jewish Holocaust the worst thing that's ever happened in history, right? And 100 million Native Americans were wiped out in America, like whole tribes of people. Tribes that people think about the Native Americans as being one group, but there was like 120 million of them here, and 100 million of them got wiped out, and a whole cultural. I mean, the loss of a massive country like this, and the loss of all the cultural and the whatever it was that was there. They had different genetics. They weren't just one tribe, right? And there's been horrific things that have happened, and I don't know where the Holocaust ranks amongst them, but it's the number one. Oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. In fact, when somebody wrote a book called The Indian Holocaust, the Native American Holocaust, Israel sued them, the Jewish lobby, because they want the term to mean one thing, and that's what happened to Jewish people. And so, when you are so hell-bent against the behavior, basically an open-air prison, these whatever they called those camps in, whatever they were, in Germany, internment camps, whatever they called them. Germany based that on what the Americans did to the Native Americans. And so, there and some things are just, they're going to happen one way or another. Master Chargy, the third master of the Steinmark system, said, what happened with America was necessary, but it wasn't the abuse, the bad shit that happened wasn't a historical necessity. Like, white people were going to find America, and they were going to move to America. That was going to happen. Europeans were going to find America. That was part of, there was going to be globalization. People were going to start spreading out. There was going to be inventions. This was all part of a divine plan. But the way they went about the killing the Native Americans, it didn't have to be that brutal, right? So all these things can be, whatever happens in these situations. But they don't want anybody else to have this term, the Holocaust. But what they're doing to the Palestinian people is exactly the same thing. And they are, committing a genocide, and we're fucking paying for it. We're funding a genocide in America, and we have our own fucking problems. And so that's the number one thing right now where people are aware of. Like, you can't put that back in the box. Like, you have to address that. And the ownership of all these politicians that Israel has bribed, which we know about, like, it's been there, and we've had politicians come out and talk about it, and we know that Israel has one of the most powerful lobby. And when Tucker Carlson destroyed with that unlikable guy from Texas, I'll think of his name in a bit. Don't tell me, don't care, don't need to know. It was about AIPAC, and he was trying to pretend that AIPAC wasn't like buying politicians the way it is. Ted Cruz is his name, all that shit. So, it's out there, and lots of people know about it. Like, it's just something. And these right-wing people have turned on Israel now. And then also, Jeffrey Epstein had an association with Israel. He had money from Israel, so he was a Mossad guy. It's almost like, without having proof, that's all there. So, and there's proof of all this stuff that I'm saying. And you guys probably all know about it, right? And so the reason Americans are turning on Israel, we're tired of giving them money. I just reported that Arkansas is going to buy another $100 million in bonds. Florida, Florida has a license plate, like a state license plate that says, I stand with Israel. I'll show you that in a bit. My wife is sending me that. We talked about that this morning. And so these young people were upset about what's going on with Palestine. And it's the kind of thing that goes around college campuses. And then all these universities started talking about this dysfunctional relationship, which we've known about for a while. There was already right-wing people that hate Jewish people, that hate Israel, that are, some of them are, maybe that's not a hate thing, maybe it's just, that's their thing. But there's people in the Jewish community, there's people in the right wing, and now the left wing, and all these youthful people. I showed you this yesterday with Megyn Kelly talking to Tucker Carlson about how she and Charlie Kirk were threatened, and Charlie Kirk was getting funded by Israel. and they were going to defund him for criticism. And so it's the way you fucking have treated not only Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly, but you've treated this, the way that Israel has pushed for censorship on college campuses and the way that they own Donald Trump, which is an obvious thing that he says Donald Trump's been the best friend that Israel's ever had in the White House. And so those are the reasons. And you can't put any of those things back in the box. And the way they were going about it, you're going about it in the worst possible way. Like you're going about it in a way that can only lead to a breakup. And I don't know if that's intentional. It's part of a plan, or this guy's just a complete fucking moron, right? Like this is a moronic thing to do. And to start off with Joseph fucking Goebbels, like who gives a shit about Joseph Goebbels? Like you're talking to an American audience, and then you're gonna fucking bring in the Holocaust, right? Like this fucking thing with Joe. I mean, I'm like, holy shit! Did he just talk about Joseph fucking Goebbels? Now, he tells you who Goebbels is, but like, we don't give a shit, right? Give us our money back, motherfuckers, right? We're tired of fucking funding you as a country, giving you $3 billion a year just fucking off the top, and then all these other things that you always are getting.
Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister.
The Nazi propaganda minister, if in case you didn't fucking know,
said that the bigger the lie, the faster it will spread.
Boom. So that's a good way to lead in. What big lie are you going to talk about?
Well, somebody has fabricated a monstrous big lie that Israel had something to do with Charlie Kirk's horrific murder. This is insane.
This is insane. It's insane in the membrane. Well, it's not insane. Because look at him. Look at this. Look at him. I mean, he's unlikable as fuck. His voice and the way he talks and just all of it is just so, it's filled with this guilt and fucking, although he's just so manipulative and in a way that's obvious and icky. And he's not going to resonate with the American people. This guy would not get elected in America. Well, God knows, because America elects fucking, horrible people. But it's not insane, right? There's evidence here, and I'll go through it because I've been talking about it the last couple of days anyway.
It is false.
It's false.
Outrageous.
It's outrageous and false. It's outrageous and false.
Charlie Kirk was a giant, a once-in-a-century talent who defended freedom, defended America, defended our common Judeo-Christian civilization.
Charlie Kirk got weirdly into Israel, which we know. Like he practiced this Shabbat, and he was. In a way that was. Whatever his arguments were, they're bullshit arguments. Whatever he was able to do on the debate stage to make it look like Israel had a case here was based in the fact that they were paying him. He was a fucking shill for Israel. And so all the things he just said about him, only he's saying because he was a shill for Israel. Israeli funding bought a building for him. So, I talked about what Candace Owens, who used to work with him, was saying, and what Megyn Kelly said, and what Charlie Kirk said himself. I showed you all that in the past couple of days. And I don't want to make this video too long, so I'm not going to re-show those things. But you can watch, these videos are all part of a playlist. And so you can watch that. If you haven't seen it already, other people are playing these things. You can find the original videos of Tucker Carlson interviewing Megyn Kelly, and there's a clip about that. And Tucker Carlson was doing that on the behest of the, Charlie Kirk, whatever it was. Like he did a show for Charlie Kirk, just like J.D. Vance did, to keep this thing going. And, it's growing, the whole thing, which Trump is talking about. They got all these more chapters, so his movement's growing. And so Charlie Kirk was questioning his relationship with Israel and Israel's decisions to do with Gaza, and he was questioning whether Israel had something to do with Jeffrey Epstein. And really not questioning. Getting funded by a country and being their shill, and then realizing it's killing your show. It's killing your movement. Because everyone else is bailing on fucking Israel. Like all the people who are your contemporaries, people you work with, people that you associate with. And Israel was starting to tell him who he could and couldn't have on his show. So they were censoring him. And they called him anti-Semitic, which he couldn't believe. Like he said, when he was talking to Megyn Kelly, he was just thinking about some of the criticism of Israel, right, which this guy's going to get into. And so if Charlie Kirk had turned on Israel, I mean, this is how desperate this motherfucker is right now. So if this is coming out of pure desperation, where he's worried that America is going to say fuck you to Israel, that Trump is going to get so much pressure, and whatever he has on Trump in terms of blackmail, Jeffrey Epstein videos and photos, if he shows that shit, Trump's going down and he's going down too. He's not. Israel is also going down. If they play that fucking card and say, yeah, we got all this shit from Jeffrey Epstein on you, they release all that shit, it's going to be traced back to him and Mossad, and they'll be like, why the fuck were you why the fuck were you funding Jeffrey Epstein's pedo shit in America, you motherfucker, right? So, which is, what happened. And so, he's in a shitty position right now. He might have something on Trump. He probably does. And, Trump is, hemorrhaging support. And if Charlie Kirk had taken a different stance on Israel, but, Charlie Kirk was being paid by them. The majority of his donors were Jewish, and he was making a shit ton of money, like tens of millions of dollars. So, he had to weigh those two things. But he was clearly starting to separate himself from Israel. And if he did that, then that was going to be a countrywide thing, because he was Israel's big mouthpiece. He was the guy who was supposed to go on these campuses and defend Israel. And if he says, fuck that, I was wrong, they do suck, and Jeffrey Epstein was their asset, then that blows all that shit up, right? And so they were desperate, and that gives them, a complete motive to kill Charlie Kirk. Like I said, they're one of the big winners. And what was happening, which we now know, because all the people in that, Charlie Kirk said shit himself. And so, according to this story, who the fuck knows? Like how much of this is all staged and happening for some staged reason. There's always God's hand, right? And one of the things that's happening on a divine level is that this is a time of truth. And the internet, in the way that information is shared, isn't an accident. Like all the buried secrets that when you had 3 fucking channels or 5, channels before they had cable, and then you had cable, but now you have the internet, they can't keep all these secrets and lies down. They can't get everyone to see and believe basically the degree in the fabric of reality. The reality that they're manufacturing. Like people now have all these diverse views. And a big growing movement is fuck Israel. Like there's a fuck Israel movement that's happening because Israel's done all this bad shit, and they're not a good friend to America. And they weren't a good friend to Charlie Kirk. Like they were, threatening him and pressuring him. And, let's go into it here.
Charlie loved Israel. He loved the Jewish people. He told me so in a letter that he sent me just a few months ago.
Just a few months ago, he sent me this letter, but what Candace Owens, who's Charlie's friend, said, well, why don't you read the whole letter? Because Charlie had concerns. You might have prefaced it. Like when you're going to drop some bad news, it's like an intervention when you go to somebody and you say, hey, we really love you, but, right? What about the but part? Because, we know that he was having issues because he said it. When you guys were doing shit, people on your behalf were defunding the guy and pressuring him. So we know these things happened, right?
One of my greatest joys as a Christian, he said, is advocating for Israel and forming alliances with Jews to protect Judeo-Christian civilization.
Yeah, that's just a bad alliance. There's this guy, some kind of Muslim cleric, and I watched some of his videos. He had interesting things that he said. He said in the Quran, is it the Quran that's for Muslim people? They say, you can relate to Christians fine, and you can relate to Jewish people fine. But when the Jews and the Christians come together, that's when there's trouble. Like that was already said in the Muslim text, right? And, that's what's happened. And it's a bad alliance. It's a really bad alliance for America. But it's not a good alliance for anybody globally, right?
He encouraged me to make the case directly to the American people about how vital Israel is to U.S. national security.
So he wanted you to make the case to us, for you to tell us how much we need you, right? Like, was he that stupid that he said to you, an unlikable fuck, Now, Tucker Carlson said that he didn't like this guy. And I don't know who could like this guy. He's just one of the most unlikable motherfuckers out there. And he's a hardliner. Like, he's not a likable person. And there's a lot of very free-thinking liberal people in Israel that are, appalled by the way the Palestinian people are being treated. There's these major Facebook groups, Jewish People for Peace and things like that. There's like 3 or 4 of them. And they post videos of Palestinian people getting abused and things. And like the country is divided over this. And they have a majority of people who are hardliners. But the people who aren't hardliners are very upset about this. And they are some of the people who are, creating this division, right? And, they've elected him because he's a hardliner. But he's not likable. He's fucking obnoxious and just icky. There's something like icky about it, really greasy. And, just the way he thought it was a good idea to start with the Joseph Goebbels. If you're going to appeal to American people, fucking stop with the Holocaust, right? No more Holocaust movies. Like, just stop talking about it. Like, that happened and had nothing to do with America and Americans. And, Americans actually saved whatever was left of these, survivors of the, Holocaust. And many of them came to America, right? So, America rescued you. So, don't try to guilt us, like, whether it's Christians or whether it's whatever you're trying to guilt for what happened there. Because we're fucking over it, right? We're overhearing about it happened so many years ago. Stop using this idea that you guys are always being hated upon and then do things that make people hate you, right? Which is the way that you've treated America, buying our politicians. All our politicians having to sign a pledge to protect Israel. And so you can't make the case of how much we need you guys. Like, that has to be made by someone like Charlie Kirk. And, and he's paid by you guys. So what the fuck, right? Like, I don't know. I don't need you. I don't need my money my taxpayers' dollars going to Israel. Like, I don't want that, right? And I grew up with very positive relationships with Jewish people. And the guy who started me in my meditation was an old, former Jewish hippie who became my preceptor, so I don't have any problem with Jewish people. I haven't had any bad, I don't have any negative stories about Jewish people. And I knew a lot of them in West Hartford, Connecticut, where there was, like 40% of the people in the town were Jewish, right? The one I grew up with. I had friends, from childhood, went to my friend's bar mitzvah. Like, I have zero, any resentment or anything to feel about Jewish people. But Zionists and Israel have not done good things for me in the world, right? And, we can all see it. And so in this chosen people thing is there's a desperation and a darkness here, like a panic, like he's panicking, like this rumor right now, not this rumor, this movement in America to go up against, detach from Israel, it's going to play a factor in next election. And Trump may never turn on you, but in 2 years, when the Congress comes back, and this becomes an issue, and then you no longer have the lobby power that you had amongst politicians, because the youth are going to want some fucking restraints put on you motherfuckers because you won't restrain yourselves in the way that you're doing a genocide right in front of everybody, and the world community is against it. And it's you against the world right now, with America wavering on their support, right? And so, this isn't helping. Right? What you're doing here ain't helping, bro, because you are not a likable person. And you coming in and telling us how much we need you, right? Because Charlie said to do it.
He told me, the Holy Land is so important to my life, it pains me to see support for Israel slip away.
Like I said, Master Charji, the third master of Sajmark, went to the Wailing Wall because people were asking him to do so. And he said, there's no spiritual energy here. There's nothing. There's no, a spiritual condition, places have a spiritual condition. There's holy places, and some of them are just natural, and some of them are created by saints. In the Sajmark system, this transmission that we receive, this divine energy that's transmitted into your heart can be used to create these ashrams that have this energy. And those people, there's few people who are listening to this who have experienced the ashrams and sittings and gone to a preceptor's house. And when you do the meditation, you go to these people's houses and you feel this godly energy. There's a peace pagoda I used to go to, and there was a good spiritual condition there. And I lived in places in the West, and of course, the ocean always, where there's a different where people go to vacation. Oftentimes, there's a different condition. The cities have horrible, heavy conditions. The spiritual condition, the vibrations that affect you. It's all about vibrations and divinities. God is love is the most subtle vibration, so it feels better than everything else, because everything else comes with some heaviness, some grossness, right? And this Holy Land where Bethlehem, in this area where Jesus was born, like it's lost whatever it had. This place is a very gross, heavy place, and they call it the Holy Land, but it's not. Some holy shit happened there, right? Not holy shit, but some holy things happened there. There are some historical, religious things that happened there. But, Jesus was born 2,000 years ago, and his condition and things, I don't know because I haven't been there, they can't be perceived. And there's so much heaviness to do with Israel. There's so much grossness with their policies and their politics. And, the religion itself is, demon worship. The God that they talk about in the Old Testament is demon worship. It's a narcissistic, jealous, mean, non-godly. It's like a jealous, narcissistic, sociopathic king who's ordering, "Oh, go destroy these people. No, go destroy these people. Oh, you didn't do this right, so I'm going to punish you." He made Moses and these motherfuckers walk around the desert for 140 years because he didn't like the way Moses was, he didn't, Moses was like a humble servant to this demon, and he still couldn't satisfy this demon. Wanted Abraham to crucify, to kill his own son so that he could prove his loyalty to him, right? God doesn't do shit like that. God doesn't want sacrifices. Death is death, but they don't want these greasy sacrifices that to some god so you get something. If you're sacrificing an animal or a person to a god, that god's a demon, right? Divine beings don't want you to sacrifice shit for them. They don't need it, right? They're above fucking being worshipped, right? They're here to serve God. They're here to serve people in a very altruistic way. They don't need to be, they don't get jealous and why are you guys worshiping that fucking golden calf, whatever it is, right?
Now, if Charlie disagreed with a policy of mine or a decision here and there, not only did I not mind, I welcomed it.
You don't welcome that. We know that anybody who wavers from their support of Israel, especially if they've taken Israeli money, they immediately pressure them. And Charlie was just thinking about, like he was, just bringing these up as possibilities. He didn't say for sure he knew Jeffrey Epstein was connected to Mossad. Like he was just flirting with these ideas. And they threatened him. Like he said, they threatened him. They told him they were going to defund him. And then they tried to bribe him, right?
This is the essence of Charlie. This is the essence of a free country. It's exactly what Charlie stood for. And
You should have thought about that before you threatened him, right?
That his suggestions always came from the heart, from his love for Israel and from his love for the Jewish people. A few weeks before his death, I spoke to Charlie. I invited him to visit Israel again.
Yeah, and you did that because he was wavering on his support. And he didn't like you, according to Tucker Carlson. And so you started to pressure him. You went to this meetings in the Hamptons and you tried to bribe him with more money because he was starting to change his tune. And that makes you look like you're connected to his death, right? That makes you look like a prime suspect. Because Charlie was doing something you didn't want to do. He was your former shill, your former rat that used to, that was selling out the Palestinian people and getting money for it. And he was starting to waver because his audience was leaving him. And he was getting pressure because he was just wrong on this fucking issue. which he knew, and he couldn't fucking deal with it. And so that's out there. Like, people know that shit, right? Like, I didn't want to cover Charlie's death. I didn't even know who the fuck guy was, right? And so I knew almost nothing about this. I had heard some things about it, some about this stuff with Candace Owens, which she was saying Charlie was starting to waver. And that was like, when the Jeffrey Epstein thing, so that's probably a month and a half ago, that Jeffrey Epstein was, the stuff was coming out about him and Trump. And people were starting to turn on Trump over it. And so if they were going to turn on Trump, they totally turned on you. And he was flirting with these ideas. And he was going to have to figure out a new way to get funded because he was getting so much money from Jewish donorship. And so that is a motive. And that ties you to this fucking death. Like, you've benefited from it because it stopped something really bad from happening for you. Because if Charlie turned on you, you're a paid asset. Like, if that guy turns on you, it's not as bad if somebody else that does it is neutral. But if somebody is as pro-Israel as you saying Charlie is, and then he wasn't, which we all know now, because he said it, and there's these interviews. There's the clip of him talking about Jeffrey Epstein being connected to Mossad. There's that clip out there. And then there's a clip of him saying, being called anti-Semitic for him changing his tune. And then there's this, this meeting that he had in the Hamptons with one of your Bill Ackerman, whatever it is, that has, been documented, that actually happened, that he was, that you are asking him to go to Israel, and Bill Ackerman is offering him money because you losing Charlie was a fucking crisis. You already, without America, you're fucked. Don't tell us how great Israel is for us. Tell us how fucked you are. Because you're doing whatever the fuck you want when you're not listening to the American people. We want you done with this fucking war. We want you to stop killing Palestinian children, you fucking murderous piece of shit. And if you'll murder, 20,000 plus Palestinian children, you'll totally murder Charlie Kirk for, stopping him from doing something that could undermine your relationship with America. And so, again, why do this? It's just, I don't think people are going to look at this and go, oh, this guy makes a lot of sense, right? Oh, my God, yeah, because you're such a likable fucking person and so believable. And if they know any of the things that I'm saying, which they do, many people know a lot more about this than I do. And so, they're not going to hear this. This is just going to remind them how much they dislike you personally. And you're the face of this. Like, you're an unlikable fuck who's, stealing our fucking money, right? On various levels. And you guys have weaseled your way into the government here, that state governments like Florida are giving hundreds of millions, Arkansas are giving hundreds of millions of dollars, to Israel to fight a war that we're not approving of, and, treating the Palestinian people in a way that disgusts most of the people in the world.
And sadly, that won't happen. Now some are peddling these disgusting rumors, perhaps out of obsession, perhaps with Qatari funding.
No, it's just because it's so obvious. You think, I don't even know Qatari? You think that we're all funded by Qatari? Just, again, why make shit like that up? Because Americans don't even know what Qatar is, other than that they gave Trump a fucking $400 million jet, which is completely fucked. That should be it for the Trumpers. I saw a video where some guy in Oxford, some kid in Oxford is debating Charlie Kirk, and he lists the Qatari shit and all that other stuff that Trump did. And you can see Charlie Kirk is trying to scramble for some ways to support Trump. And the kid's kind of owning him in a debate format. I'm not going to show you it because it's just, the video. Maybe tomorrow or whatever, it might come back around. But maybe somebody sent it to me. I don't know. I can't remember how that all happened. But, nobody cares about Qatar here. We don't think Qatar is evil because we don't even think about it. I think I flew through there one time. I went to the airport, but that's about it. Barely, and I don't even know if that's true. My trips to India, there's always a place you have to stop. I stopped in France, I stopped in Saudi Arabia, I stopped in Dubai, you do a transfer, right? And, your enemies and the people that you demonize are not anything to do with us. And so the reason people are sharing this is because we don't like you and we don't like this relationship. And it's getting worse. And now, like, you did this thing here, which means you're fucking desperate. Or, they are just trying to make, like, the only outcome I could see from this is it's going to make it worse for him, right? When you do something, this video is pouring gas on the fire. And is that intentional? Do they want a divorce between America and Israel? And what does that mean? What happens when that happens when you have a country that has been using, we pay them money, $3 billion a year. And they take that money and they bribe American politicians so they can get more money and support. And so, and all the other things that Israel does to manipulate Americans and, to go against our own best self-interest and provide for them the ability to do bad shit in that region that causes hatred towards America and all these other things. So, at some point, Americans will be like, oh, this, relationship. Like, why am I in this, right? And it's like, he's like a little golem. This guy's a little fucking golem. And it's like, why are we hanging out with this fucking guy, right? And so you doing this, I mean, the only outcome is you're going to make it worse. Nobody's going to watch this. None of these people that are moving in this direction are going to watch this. Like, for example, me. Like, this is like, this is just, I wouldn't have started my video talking about this. I talked about it in the last video. I wasn't going to be talking about Israel today at all. I talked about it in my last two videos. And so, I was moving on to something else. And there's other things to move on to. And you just said, hey, look at me. Just everybody shit on Israel again and make fun of my fucking horrible PSA telling you guys how much you need me, how much Charlie loved us, and that how it's so ridiculous that we would kill a guy who used to own, who was then turning on us, which would have done, possibly. I mean, if Charlie Kirk is pressuring Trump to do something on Israel, and then all these people that, the college kids, and you lose the Republican kids on campus, and the Republican kids and the Democratic kids are all united with the fuck you Israel position, then you've lost any future relationships with Israel. Like, Israel will be, as these kids, as the older generation dies off, the ones that are pro-Israel, and you have the younger generation that hates Israel, you're fucked. Like, if you have no future here. And this is this last chance, fucking last gasp here.
What I do know is this. Charlie Kirk was a great man, and a great man deserves honor, not lies. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk.
Okay. Then there's a thing here. It's a glitch, right?
Charlie Kirk. May your
there's a little break there.
Kirk. May your memory be a blessing.
Boom. So you think we're lying about him? You think that the lies are about him? He was the one that was breaking free from you. And so, like, that was happening. And you just lied about that. You lied about the trip. You misled people. You didn't give people a full story. That you were inviting Charlie. If you were going to speak honestly here, you would say Charlie was wavering in his support for Israel. Like, you want to erase the month before, where Charlie was changing his tune. He supported you guys in a way that was fucked because you were paying him to do it. He was a fucking shill. He was a piece of shit Israeli shill that was going to campuses and arguing with college students that were on the right track about our relationship with Israel and your treatment of the Palestinian people. And then you guys fucking killed him. Or something happened, right? And so, that's what it looks like. And so you just, you didn't talk about that he was having change of heart. Like, you talked about the way he was maybe 2 months before he died. Like, you're not acknowledging the 2 months that your relationship was strained with him. The 2 months where you guys were threatening him. The 2 months where you guys were pulling funding from him, right? And so, like, we know about that shit. So when you come out and lie to us and say, Charlie Kirk deserves more than lies, but you're lying about him, and then all these other things that pertain to speak for him, after you did this greasy tour where you came around And you tried to make it about how much Charlie, loved Israel. Like, why did you come to all these interviews when you knew like fucking things were going south for you? And now you this act of desperation, and Trump putting out a flag for Israel and Trump, like Israel and Trump, like that looks even weirder now. Like, how desperate is Trump to keep, this thing from going south? And so you look guilty as fuck, bro. You look guilty as fuck, bro. So my wife sent me this today. My wife knows very little about the Israeli relationship. Like, we've been talking about that. Like, lots of people didn't know, and I didn't know so much. And I didn't cover it over the years because there were so many obnoxious people that just hate Jews in a way that made me uncomfortable. Like all Jewish people, ones in America, ones that have nothing to do with this. And I've always said to them, to these people, that if you understand all the things that Jewish people have invented or things that are part of American culture, and some of those things are not good things, but if you remove those things, you'd be bummed. Like, there's inventions you use every day. There's, technological and software stuff, whatever it might be, that Jewish people are even that invented or contributed to. There's a part of, all these Jewish scientists that were used to build the atomic bomb. Of course, it's a bad thing. They came from Germany. That's how America got the, first nuclear weapons, which, again, not good things there. But, there are things out there that are integral to your everyday life. There's just no all bad and all good in cultures and people. And, cultures all have been degraded around the world. But Israel and America in recent history, I mean, it's all pretty much bad. The Zionist stuff and, the Zionist element in the American political system. The Israeli lobby and then the neocons and all these other people. And so, the bad stuff is now there. And they have pushed back on you knowing the bad stuff. And here.
Breaking news. Florida, a few months ago, rolled out this new license plate behind me. It's Florida stands with Israel, and it has the flag on it. You see the two blue lines, the white in the middle and the star?
Okay, so you see it. You get the idea. So this was a license plate you would pay for, and I would assume the money would go to Israel, right? Like, you pay this extra money for a license plate, because Florida's already buying all kinds of unsecured bonds. I've covered that. And now Arkansas. They're buying Israeli bonds that are unsecure with their taxpayer dollars. And they're going to lose that fucking money when this thing goes south on Israel, which it is. So, Israel's desperate, and America's wavering. And who knows what they'll do, and World War III may be a part of it, right? But the stuff that they got us to do on Iran, all the things, and there were a lot of Republicans that didn't like Trump bombing Iran for no reason. After we fucked Iran over years and years ago with Operation Ajax, and, the whole thing with the Mossadegh, a democratic, a moderate leader when Iran was much more modernized. And we fucked that country over. And people are kind of aware of this shit now, like, because the internet and the things that, it's just you can't tamp down on the lies. So I saw this yesterday, and I put this video way in the back. Like, I'll get to this in a couple of days, because I was tired of talking about Israel. Like, I just talked about Israel's motive for killing Charlie Kirk. In 2 consecutive videos, I covered Charlie Kirk's deteriorating relationship with Israel. And this came in, which was interesting, but I was done talking about it. But now it's it's been moved up to the front of the video because he released that horrible PSA. Why would he do something? Do they not know that the guy's fucking unlikable? Do they not know that when American people see this guy, American kids, they're like, ick. Like, they don't know how this guy comes off and how desperate that was. And it's having the opposite effect, right? Like, there's no way it doesn't. Like, people going, oh, this guy makes a lot of sense. No, there's no way they're saying that. Oh, my God, I was wrong. The whole, he's creating fuel for the fire.
The U.S. President and the British Prime Minister acknowledged their differences on the issue of the recognition of a Palestinian state.
At their news conference earlier, both leaders said they want to end the war in Gaza and acknowledge the brutality of the Hamas attack on October 7th, 2023. Keir Starmer said he plans to recognize a Palestinian state within the context of an overall plan for peace. President Trump focused on the release of hostages.
I want an end. I want the hostages released. And I think it's going to be okay. But it has been a brutal period of time. But this has been going on for a long time. This is not something that's over the last year, 2 years. But this has been for decades and decades.
3,000 years. There's been a battle between the Muslims and the Jews for 3,000 years. It's not decades, bro. It's not even centuries. It's in the thousands of years. Like this, there's decades or centuries, and then there's 1,000-year period, right? If you go back to 3,000 years in what the technology was then, how primitive people were. And that's 3,000 years is hard to comprehend. That there's been beef between Jews and Muslims for 3,000 fucking years.
We want it to end. We have to have the hostages back immediately. That's what the people of Israel want. They want them back.
On the ground, Israeli tanks appear to be stationed on the edge of Gaza City 2 days after Israel's military announced its ground incursion into the city had begun.
Reuters is reporting that internet and phone lines have been cut across Gaza. This as Israel continues its aerial bombardment. Palestinian officials say more than 100 people were killed across Gaza in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, tens of thousands of Palestinians are heeding Israel's warning and streaming out of Gaza City any which way they can as intense.
Jesus fucking Christ, look at that.
International criticism mounts. Some new comments by Israel's far-right finance minister could fuel tensions as well.
Bezalel Smotrich says negotiations are currently underway to divide Gaza and describes the battered enclave as, quote, a real estate bonanza. Listen to Smotrich describe the plan in his own words.
Look at this guy. Look at this hat.
I admit, I didn't expect this. Just so you know, it's not funny. There is a business plan. Listen to me carefully. There's a business plan set by the most professional people there is, and is on President Trump's table, and how this thing turns into a real estate bonanza. I'm not kidding. It pays off. I have started negotiations with the Americans. I say this not jokingly now, because I also demand. We paid a lot of money.
Wait, you be joking about that? This would be a joke? I'm not joking. We're going to fucking wipe out 2 million fucking people and get them the fuck out of their country. And then we're going to take their land, and then we're going to turn it into fucking a Trump Tower vacation paradise. And you guys can get in. I'm not joking about this. This is not a joke. I mean, you know how funny that sounds. You know how funny it sounds that we're going to kill 500,000 kids and 1.5 million, adults and get rid of them and move them out of their country and bomb the shit out of them. And then move in, take the real estate, divide it up amongst us. I mean, I know that's pretty funny, but I'm not fucking joking here.
Negotiations with the Americans. I say this not jokingly now, because I also demand. We paid a lot of money for this war, so we need to divide how we make a percentage on the land marketing later in Gaza. And now, no kidding, we've done the demolition phase, which is always the first phase of urban renewal.
Look at this guy laughing here. We've done the demolition phase. He's laughing. Watch this guy laugh when he says we've done the demolitions phase.
Percentage on the land marketing later in Gaza. And now, no kidding, we've done the demolition phase, which is always the first phase of urban renewal. Now we need
urban renewal. Urban renewal. We bombed the shit out of the people that live there. But we did the demolition with the people actually in the houses. That's I'm not joking. I mean, that's pretty funny that we did the demolition phase, but we had the people in the houses while we did it. We made up this thing when we have this, we have this group of people, Hamas, that is our asset, and they took some of our hostages, so we got to do the demolition while the Palestinian people were in the buildings. That's pretty funny. I'm not joking here. I mean, I know you guys are laughing at that, like I'm being laughing.
Build. It's much cheaper.
Right, let's bring in CNN's Jeremy Diamond, joins us live now from Jerusalem. So in that press conference between Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, and President Donald Trump, Keir Starmer talked about the importance, in his view, of recognizing a Palestinian state, but he also took time.
All right, so I don't think what Trump and the Prime Minister said is important. I think what that other guy said about the big real estate that's become available beachfront property where these people are marching down the fucking thing with nowhere to go because the other countries don't want to let them in. And why should they? And they're just stuck there, and are being a genocide is happening. But it's pretty funny. Like, it's pretty, I'm not joking. This is serious business here. Like, holy fuck, right? I had this realization, which I cover in a long voiceover. Kind of interesting. How history repeats itself. It has to do with Charlie, Kirk, and Jesus. I'm editing now, and I got one more little thing to show you, then I get into that. But it's almost like, Israel as an entity. Like, you have your friends and your people in your life that just... I watched this thing on Charlie Sheen, self-destructive people. And they just can't help themselves. Like, they have moments where they're able to do good. They're alcoholics, they're gambling addicts, they're drug addicts, they're whatever they are, serial cheaters, gamblers. Addiction to something that just overwhelms them. It's like Israel has this thing, and they just keep on repeating this historically. And it's just this pattern, right? And now, like, America and Israel, I mean, this doesn't, there's no way this can end well. This is going to be a bad divorce. But anyways, let's get into this last thing here. Okay, I just had a realization, which I'll talk to you about. I'm going to shoot this one clip here. And then I had this incredible realization. Kind of, maybe it's a little bit funny. Probably not that funny. Funny to me, not to most people. But it's like a holy fuck thing. But let me show you this here, and then I'll go to the voiceover and do that. I have a comment I really want to get to, too. But first, this.
President Trump just left the United Kingdom, and as he's on his way back to Washington, he spoke with reporters and blatantly made clear that he believes if late-night hosts on network shows continue to criticize him, then those networks and their broadcasting licenses that they get are then going to be at risk of being revoked.
I read someplace that the networks were 97% against me. I got 97% negative, and yet I won easily. I won all 7 swing states, popular, I won everything. And if they're 97% against, they give me only bad publicity or press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away. It will be up to Brendan Carr.
Of course, this is...
Sure, it'd be up to Brendan Carr. Yeah, it's a Brendan Carr thing. It's not anything to do with me. It's Brendan Carr. It's about Brendan Carr. Yeah, it's just that guy. He makes his own decisions. Just like all my other staffers make their own. He doesn't sit around the cabinet. We don't sit around the cabinet table and worship me and tell me how great I am and ask me, hey, Mr. Trump, hey, President Trump, what can I do for you, President Trump, right? It's like... It's not like I just hired a bunch of gophers that do whatever I want, right?
Result of what we saw happen with Jimmy Kimmel being pulled indefinitely off the airwaves at ABC. He also did something he didn't do at his press conference here in the UK. He praised Brendan Carr, that is, of course, the chairman of the FCC, who was pressuring ABC and Disney to make changes when it came to Jimmy Kimmel's monologue.
I think Brendan Carr is outstanding. He's a patriot. He loves our country, and he's a tough guy.
Yeah, all right. So there's more there. I think I got more on this thing. But let me go over to the voiceover because this thing is it's the shit. Okay, so I had this kind of realization. Just eating breakfast and then all these things. I talked about I don't view Charlie Kirk as a spiritual person based on spiritual merits, not his ideology, not what he says. Spiritual people have a condition, a spiritual energy, and they have a connection to God, and they have whatever. God will use anybody, not use. Use is we're all dependent on God. Like I've said before, you can survive without food for like 40 days. You can survive without water for like 3 or 4 days. You can survive without breathing for 10, 15 minutes. You cannot survive any amount of time. The smallest and most insignificant amount of time, a millisecond, without God's love. Your physical body, you as a spiritual being, we're all dependent on God's love. So to say that God uses us is not quite correct. But on a moment-to-moment basis, even the most evil people can be a conduit for God's love, God's energy, God's knowledge, right? And if you're willing to work for God, even if you're a piece of shit, it's an opening, right? If you're willing to contribute to the divine system, and it's not just God. There are divine beings, etheric beings that oversee the planet on a spiritual level. So if you believe in God, you believe in souls, then you have to, that's a part of that, right? There has to be higher developed souls that, God has no mind and no ego, no personality. So there has to be individual beings that work for God on a higher level that monitor things. Like that has to be part of the system because they have to, understand, read the instructions, read the room in terms of what God wants and administer those plans. Make sure that God's will is, the divine order is kept. So I'm sure that to some extent Charlie Kirk was used because he's talking about God, and he's obviously, in terms of this persona that he has, is a person who is religious, right? And that's not as good as being spiritual, like I said, because religions, again, like here's an example of how religions make you suck spiritually. So Charlie Kirk was supporting Israel and their bullshit policies because in the Old Testament, which is not a book that, when a person becomes a spiritual person and they leave their religion behind, their religion is a part of their history. And so I grew up as a Catholic, and my mom was a devout Catholic. Both my mom and my grandmother prayed to the rosary, as did all these prayer meeting people. And they prayed for me and my siblings, and I know that, at least for me and my brother, it paid dividends because we found Sagemark's system, and me specifically. The prayers really helped me. I know that my mom and my grandmother's prayers, and the prayers from nuns and people who used to go to the prayer meetings at my mom's house helped me. And I know that I had a good experience in the Catholic religion. No negative experiences. I mean, church sucked to some extent. It's going to church every Sunday sucked because there's no energy there, like whatever. But I benefited from my religion I grew up with, right? And I left it all behind. I did drugs. I was kind of a punk. I was a non-productive person, an underachiever. Just a worthless piece of shit, right? I mean, like, I look back at that period of my life and non-contributing, not going anywhere, angry, just, a negative person. Like I was, whatever. And some part of me, had this, there's like things that were there. I was in a Rahu period according to Vedic astrology, which is a dark period where there's drug use and, there could be depression and suicidal tendencies, which I wasn't suicidal, but I was self-destructive and just, going nowhere, negative, didn't have a purpose, didn't have a goal. And then I had this miraculous spiritual experience in my meditations, my first 3 meditations in the Sagemark system. And it, transformed me as a person, right? And I had now a spiritual goal, and, I was now on this different path. Now, my being a Catholic is a part of that journey, but it is, I left all that bullshit, that, religious bullshit behind. The good things that helped me, the prayers, the rosary isn't the best way to pray, but prayer is prayer, and, it was positive for me. My mom and my grandmother prayed for, saying the rosary and praying, and other people praying, prayer circles and things. That, prayer works, and that was a part of my journey. It was, it's hard to, it's hard to go back and look at prayer. It's an etheric thing and see how it helps, but I'm aware of it helping, right? But let's get back to the Jesus part. So when Jesus left his religion, when he was, he graduated to be a spiritual person. So religions are a gatekeeper between you and God. God is externalized, and, religions, some religions are better than others. Hinduism has a lot of God being inside you as part of their teaching, so that's why that religion is better. And that religion also recognizes recognizes Jesus and other various saints and people. Like the religion isn't prejudiced against other systems in the same way, but it's still a religion. And a spiritual person now rewrites their own spiritual journey and embraces spiritual teachings. And spiritual teachings can be from all the different religions. Like I've read all these various things, not just from religions, but spiritual, works. I know some of it. I'm not like a scholar on it. And, and the teachings that are in Sagemark include, Master Chargy quoted from the Bible and quoted from, various other religious texts and had all these stories and fables and things that came from different religions because they're all part of one movement, which is to connect people to God, right? And so when Charlie Kirk did something bad for himself and his followers, which was to embrace Israel, even though Israel was committing a genocide because it said some bullshit thing about you should support Israel in the Old Testament, which had nothing to do with Jesus, right? So, that's why I'm talking about him not being spiritual, like he was, but he, maybe when he read scripture and, there was something, I don't know, right? David Koresh had spiritual energy, had something, like he had some abilities, but, he did a lot of weird cultish shit too, right? So, God is there with everybody. And lots of times people have, you have your moments with God and then your moments with your ego. And your ego can be a real piece of shit, right? But you could be really devoted to God. You can be a real piece of shit person, but also have the tendencies to be devoted to God. And that's where things get, there's like, that's where you get the pedophile priests and those kind of things, right? Where you get people who are legitimately devoted to God, but then they have like weird, other things going on, right? And so, there's a difference between the ego and the soul, and there's a, and oftentimes with people, there's a battle. And usually the ego wins, unless people are engaged in a really authentic spiritual practice. But here's my realization, right? So to so many people, Charlie Kirk was a representation of Jesus. And now you have Israel and Jews being implicated in his death, very much like Jesus was, right? Judas and the whole idea. There's lots of Christians who believe that the Jews murdered Jesus. Now, like I said, I believe in Jesus's teaching and Jesus's presence in the Sajmark system. Master Chargy was St. Paul in a previous life, so he has a deep connection to Christianity, the third master of the system. So he worked on numerous, he was involved in numerous other spiritual movements, as was the second master Babaji. And so, there's that. And then Jesus intercommuned with the second master Babaji quite a bit and blessed the system and is actually doing work for the Sajmark system. I had a dream with Jesus in it, which I've talked about. And, when Babaji first intercommuned with Jesus, he said, because this is just etiquette, he's intercommuned with Jesus' soul. And he asked Jesus permission to work on Christians, right? To accept Christians into the Sajmark system. And Jesus said, yeah, no, I want them to go there. And he blessed the system. And so years later, I had a dream, an unprovoked dream with Jesus, very vivid. And I walk up to him and go, because all these Christians were coming to my channel. And I was going to say things like I say now about Christianity, things I know that Christians don't know, things I know about Jesus that Christians don't know about through my practice, and things I know about religion through my spiritual practice, right? Because, people are stuck in a religion and don't go to the spiritual level. Like Jesus was an example of this. Jesus was born a Jew, and they became a spiritual person. Swami Vivekananda gave a great quote, "A religion is a great thing to be born in, but a horrible thing to die in." And so having religious parents is good, but then becoming a spiritual person is better. Like that's, where you make that transformation where you find divinity within you, right? The kingdom of heaven is within. So I go up to Jesus and I say, is it okay if I talk about this stuff? And, the first master of Sajmark system said, don't criticize other people's religion because it might be all they can do. Their religion might suck, but for them, it's the top of the line. Like they that's all they can do. They're not developed enough to do something more sophisticated. They're not ready to do something else. And most of his works are very abstract. Like he wrote these essays and things, and you have to have like a doctorate in yoga to understand what he's talking about. And so he did, and most of his works were hidden by his family. They weren't given over to Babaji when he took over as master of the system. And so there's very few teachings and things from him. But one of them that was very clear was don't criticize religions. And so, I was always hesitant to say things. But, this is about me telling my truth and getting this information out there. And so I say this thing to Jesus, is it all right if I say these things to Christians And he says to me, why do you think I'm sending them? Why do you think I'm sending them to you? And then I woke up. So, in my dream, Jesus sends Christians to me so that I can tell them stuff that he wants to hear. Like, that's my interpretation of my relationship to Christians that come here, right? That's, again, when it's a very vivid dream in a Sajmark system, when you dream about one of the masters, and Jesus is, one of the spiritual people in the history of humanity, it's Jesus. So, like, for me, that was Jesus, and that was an instruction, and that was this relationship. So this is the stuff that I say, right? But anyways, going back to it, so Charlie Kirk represents Jesus, and there's lots of people that believe the Jews killed Jesus. And now, Netanyahu's giving this fucking speech, right? Where he's, hey, I didn't have anything to do with it. Like, it's like the most guilty thing I've ever seen, right? The most self-incriminating thing I've ever seen. And, there's all this evidence and all this, motive that the Israeli people and, the government had to kill, Charlie Kirk. So it's like almost like history repeating itself, right? Remember when Jeffrey Epstein allegedly committed suicide, then all these people were saying, like, they'd be interviewed at a football game, and they would say something, then they would end it by saying, and Jeffrey Epstein didn't commit suicide. Remember, it was like a whole thing, right? Thank you, Brandon, or whatever it was, right? That whole thing with Joe Biden. Fuck Joe Biden. Thank you, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. That's what it was. But you have these things. But the Jesus thing, when the Jeffrey Epstein thing, and now you have, all these people believe that Charlie Kirk was murdered by Israel. And so when you're a spiritual person, everything that you get comes from God. And I know that Jesus, in terms of the Sajmark teachings, was praying for death. Because, I understand it on a level you guys don't. That you guys who don't have channels like this and don't have a spiritual purpose in that channel and haven't worked as a preceptor or something like this, or worked as a person. But if you have, like, if you've worked in some way, like a way where you're proselytizing or whatever they call it, when you're out in a legitimate way, because your religion sucks, it's still not the same. But when you're doing spiritual work and you're talking to people about their higher nature, and you see over and over again they embrace their lower nature, and you see, like what I saw with the Sajmark system when Master Chargy died, and Master Chargy micromanaged everything, and then his successor shit the bed, Dodgy, this clown Dodgy, and when he just went went full stupid and full cult and just did a bunch of dumb fuck things, and then I saw all these people who I regarded as very saintly people, who are very saintly people, very devotional to God, and them just not being able to fucking manage this, pretty shitty situation. This thing that was such a blessing, a spiritual organization with transmission and cleaning that just elevated people to a higher level. And all the great gatherings and all the things that we participated in together, all the things. And then them not being able to see the truth or not being able to tell the truth and not being able to do anything, just impotent. And, and let this thing die without fighting back at all. It like disgusted me, right? So, I can tell you that when you are working to elevate people and working to change, and it's a small part of me, man, I do it, but I'm kind of a slacker. But I am engaged in that process, right? Working to elevate people's consciousness. And I've seen over and over again, people just don't fucking want it. And there's been so many spiritual movements that have involved the same souls of the same people incarnating in here and trying to elevate the fucking, the dumb fucks, humanity. And they just don't want it. They just want to go to the lower level. It's the Kali Yuga, so it's the worst time. So it isn't like, it can be better at times. But, people just don't want to embrace their higher nature. And so I get why Jesus would pray to die. Because it's just, it was just one of his disciples, Judas stabbed him in the back. This is how it played out. Peter would deny him. Thomas would doubt him. You know, there's just all these things. Master Chargy said, yeah, there's 1 out of 12 people who will betray you. Like, it's like a ratio. Like 1 out of 12 of your closest, supporters, maybe even the best one, ends up stabbing you in the back as a spiritual person. So Jesus was praying to die. So to blame everything on Jewish people, but, the Pharisees and the Jewish establishment definitely sold Jesus out and definitely had a role in that, right? And history repeats itself. And so, they don't want to be blamed for that as a culture. But Christians and Jews, in a way, should not get along because Jews don't recognize Christ as a spiritual figure and as the, as the Messiah. He wasn't the Messiah either because, that's not a real thing. But he was a spiritual person, and he did bring a level of spiritual energy to those people at that time. But the two movements cannot, you have to leave your religion behind. Your religion is good until it no longer serves you. And then you graduate to something better. When you're telling your story, you have stories about kindergarten, but, you have more stories about getting your master's degree or your doctorate in terms of your educational process, right? You needed kindergarten to get your high school diploma. You needed kindergarten to graduate elementary school. And you needed kindergarten to eventually get your master's or your doctorate degree or whatever it is. Like, you needed kindergarten as the basis of your future education. But you don't stay in kindergarten forever. But anyways, here's this thing that's happened where Jesus is, Charlie Kirk is people see him like a Jesus-like figure, somebody who's doing Jesus' work, and then he's been killed. And Israel seems to be, at least in circumstantial levels and in terms of motive, a prime suspect, right? And so, history repeating itself. Okay, so this person writes, I am new here. I really enjoyed the video. One thing I would ask, if you please won't swear so much. Thanks, God bless. So, whether I should be swearing more or less, whatever that is. Like, swearing isn't a higher developed thing, so it's something that, I've had my back and forth with, right? And so, I don't care about it. I'm not, but this is the way I feel about everything. This is, where I am right now, right? In terms of the whole fucking mess we're dealing with. And so, there's times that I swear more and there's times that I swear less. And some of that will be, if YouTube demonetizes for swearing, there's different, reasons. But, that's my choice. That's what I'm going through. That's me being sincere. And right now, me being authentic involves swearing, right? But the issue with this person's comment is something else, because this isn't really about swearing. I am new here. I really enjoyed the video. One thing I would ask, if you please won't swear so much. You're new here, you just got here, and you got something out of the video. You're getting something from me. And the first thing you do is ask something from me. Like, this is how fucked people are, and this happens all the time. Like, this is how narcissistic, and, so you've come here. You've come to my video channel, right? And you're like, wow, this guy's good. I like this video. And so your first act is to ask me to change something, right? Is to ask me to cater your fucking needs. Like, how fucked are you? Like, that you would think that that's the appropriate thing to do in a social situation. I have social issues. Like, I'm awkward socially. Some of it is my dad. It's my brother and I used to talk about. I'm dyslexic and I'm introverted and I have all kinds of things. I'm different than the majority of people. Like, there's very few people that have my specific personality type and whatever it is. And, I'm an outsider. And just in my upbringing. And my brother, we would talk about, like, things we would say all the time. That was just, we like, why the fuck did I say that, right? And I really have trouble faking things that other people can fake. When I was in India, I could, all of a sudden, I learned how to fake smile. Like, I'd never been able to do that. And I'd walk by people I knew. And, like, I would nod and I would try to smile and it would come out weird, right? And then, like, I was in India, I see all these people and some of them I didn't like. or didn't, whatever. But, I knew them, and they just these weird superficial interactions. And so I am, not somebody who's great on social things. And men already struggle with that. Women are naturally better at that shit, right? But, even in that, I know when somebody else is like, and there's so many times I'm like, boy, you suck socially. That means that somebody who sucks as bad socially as I do. And, for somebody to come here and watch a video, you watch your first video here and you like it, and you're already asking for something, like, where do you think you get the leverage in my relationship to you when you show up as some random fuck and you want me to censor myself and cater to your specific needs, right? Like, where the fuck do you get off asking for something? You think you're at a restaurant and I'm your fucking waiter and I'm here to fucking make your life happy and your meal more enjoyable and I'm catering you? Just one more thing. Yeah, I have a, and you're complaining about something? You've enjoyed the video, so enjoy the fucking video and shut the fuck up, right? If you're going to say, like if you're going to leave a comment, this should have been what your comment was, right? This should have been what your comment was. I am new here. I really enjoyed the video. That should have been it. That should have been the whole comment. That would have expressed, what you should have expressed. You don't have to comment at all, but that's what it would have been with a comment. One thing, though, because I have such leverage in this relationship, I am a new viewer, and I've done absolutely nothing for you. But, if you want me to watch future videos, I might watch this one for you, because it's all about you. Me, I'm not doing this for myself. I like the video, but, if you want me to watch ones in the future, one thing I would ask you, please, you won't swear so much. Thanks and God bless. No, that's like a big fuck you. Thanks and God bless. That's like, So there's a couple of things about this. I don't have to pander to you guys. I don't, because what I present here is either divinely inspired or I'm crazy, right? Like I think it's something that it isn't. But, my spiritual evolution, I've fucking had to eat shit. I had to fucking go through all kinds of shit to transform into the person I am today. And, I still have farther to go. I'm still eating shit for my future spiritual evolution, right? Like, you just have to go through stuff. Your ego takes a fucking unbelievable beating. Your ego has to be beaten into submission by, your divine process. Not that God is doing the beating, but it needs, the ego has to be tamed. And you go through shit from whatever you did in the past. You have to pay for your samskaras, your misdeeds of the past. And I had some bad fucking lives. So I had to pay for all kinds of things. I went through things physically, emotionally. I went through really dark phases. A lot of disappointment, Grew up in a shitty family that was, whatever that was. And then, got married and hoped that my family would be completely different. And my family fell apart, and I have basically no relationship with my kids, which is a huge disappointment from where it started off. I did 18 years with someone who was suicidal and fucking crazy. And, abuse person, someone who was abused as a kid, according to her story. And more than 18 years. And it was bad. Like, we'd have an argument, I'd have to go hide the knives. I mean, so many stories I've told in the Journey series, and this audio will also be in there. But I've talked about it, right? And while I was going through that, like, I was the one being blamed by my social circle within my organization. I mean, at least, like, quietly, because my ex was undermining, and, she had a whole story that she was, pitching out there. And I knew that just because of the way I came off and the way I looked, it was useless for me to try to defend myself. And I was so worried about my kid's future, and I was going through things physically and all these different things. And this resentment I had towards God came up from like a deep place and was being cleaned out. And so I was just wiped out. Like I was almost like I died. Like there was a young Indian woman who was she was American. She was from India. Her parents had a little bit of an accent. Her parents were nice. I met her parents in India, but she was from America and she knew my kids and hung out with my kids. She was a doctor, right? She had just gone through med school, Nice, nice young girl. And, I knew her a little bit. And she walks up to me one day and go, are you all right? And like, and we didn't know each other that well, right? And I'm like, yeah, well, why do you say that? She goes, because you're all stooped over. You barely look like you could make it. And you're gray, I'm like, fuck. Like, that's what I look like, right? So I had to go through all that shit. And, all the knowledge that I've gained, and not only in this life, in past lives. And, I've had experiences. I've had, multiple incursions and, things that I've done here on Earth as a person. And, all that stuff I just give freely here, whatever it is. And so, and I do this because all the stuff that Babaji had and all the stuff that Charji had, and Lalaji, the first master of the Sajmark system, and then all these other people like Jesus and all these other saints, they came here and they give freely because they work for God, right? And I've benefited from that. And so, there was a moment where Charji came to, like, he had this a cottage where he was, and people would wait outside the gate to get in and spend time with him. And one time he walked up to the gate and he opened himself up and he said, loot me, take everything that I have, right? Everything that I have spiritually. The Sajmark system, the masters of the system give everything they have in the transmission and in the teachings and in everything, hoping that you accept it. And most people, they just don't have the capacity to accept it all, at least in this life. And so, that is what it is. But that's what's given in the system. The transmission where the masters of the system reach a spiritual goal and are helped up by, previous masters and by these divine beings that, run the planet, these higher developed souls. And then they, from that place, they transmit and give everything that they've achieved to everybody who's there participating. So it's a unique process, right? And that's what you get in this channel. Like, as much as I have to give, I give. The higher stuff, the lower stuff, the humor, all the stuff. I just, I'm not saving, I'm not holding anything back for myself, whatever it is. I just pour myself into the videos, right? And there's great things in these videos because of it, right? Because of the blessing. I was an incompetent person. Like, I don't have any delusions of grandeur because I was a low-functioning person before I was blessed with the Sajmark system of meditation. So, there's all of that. But, I just pour myself into the things as a way to pay off my debt, right? We all have a debt to God, and, I have a debt to this spiritual system. And so it has nothing to do with you guys. Like, you don't owe me something. It's something I do, and you benefit from it because you benefit. If you benefit because it's something that's beneficial. But because that there's real things in here, and how many times I've been right, and, I speak truth in a different way, that, you have to endure whatever things that are there. Like, whatever things you don't like about me, whatever personality issues I have, the swearing or this kind of thing, you have to eat that because that's just what it is, right? That's a part of it, right? That's, it comes with it, right? It comes with this who I am. Like, if you see something in these videos, then you have to, you have to eat the shit you don't like, right? Like, you have to, your ego has to, whatever prejudice you have or whatever who gives a shit if I swear? Like, why does that bother you? Like, why can't you change? Why do I have to change to accommodate you? Like, why are you so fucking special that I'm the one who should change? That I have something to offer you here that, comes from a divine place and comes from my years and years of spiritual experience and can benefit people, and, all the knowledge that I have about homesteading and these other things, and all the things I'm able to perceive of and read in other people, and all the things that I say here that you don't get anywhere else, right? Because of that relationship, because of the blessings I've received. And because of your one view, you think you have leverage to ask me to fucking change, right? Like, I'm the one who's supposed to fucking change and not you. I'm the one who's supposed to be accommodating. I'm supposed to give more to you because of your one fucking view, because you think it's so valuable for me to have you watch my fucking video, right? Like, you think I should, I'm the one who's supposed to adapt to you. You walk into the door of something you know nothing about, and you say, hey, I kind of like it here, but hey, what can you do to accommodate me more? Like, what can you, I know I'm new to this thing. I know I haven't contributed shit. I'm a non-contributing motherfucker, but I'm going to make fucking demands right off the fucking bat. Like, I mean, this is like why people are depressing. Like this is, hey, I kind of like this thing, but you can make some fucking changes. I mean, I've watched one video. I think I've earned the right to give you some input into how to accommodate my future viewing of your videos. Otherwise, I'm leaving. There's this woman. I didn't swear in the beginning. I've gone back and forth with swearing. My dad swore, and I started to swear when I was a little kid. I grew up in the Connecticut region. And I hung out with seedy people, and people who swore. I mean, I have a diverse past. And there was some woman who would watch my videos, and she was a Christian. She really liked them. But one day she was like, wrote me a comment. I was about to watch your video. I started watching your video, and you swore. And so now I'm turning off your video, and I'm going to do something else. Like it was this long comment. I'm not doing it justice to how bad it was. Like she had some, she was offended in some way, and she was dumping that shit on me like it's my fucking problem, right? Like you don't have to watch the videos. There's either something in, I'm not looking for mercy views. There's a young woman who wrote to me, like this is back when I interacted with people more. And she said, could you recommend my channel to other people? Could you tell people about my channel? And, now I wouldn't even probably look at it. I mean, maybe if I had time, depending on. But I looked at her channel. She had like one video. And she's going, I know this video isn't very good, but I'm trying. And, and she like kind of sang a song really badly. And she was like apologizing for how bad the video is. And I'm like, why the fuck would you ask me to recommend something that, like, your content sucks, right? Like, why would you want me to do that? Like, why would you, why would you want people to watch your content if it sucks? You're hoping that if, like, people watch it, it won't suck anymore and you'll get better. Like, make your content good. Be able to attract an audience. It's bad enough now with the algorithms and things. But if you have sucky content on top of it, I don't, if I made sucky content, I wouldn't make videos. If I thought my content sucked and I had nothing worth saying or nothing worth contributing, I wouldn't make videos. I'm not making videos so people can listen to me. And like, I'm not looking for mercy views. If you don't watch the videos, I don't want you to watch them. Like, why would that would be a dysfunctional thing, right? Like, I wouldn't try to emotionally manipulate people to watch my videos. If you don't like it, then, you shouldn't watch it, right? Well, I don't like something, I don't watch it. Like, why would I want that from you? And so either I have something to offer here, or I don't. And if I do, everyone's going to have their, like, some people are going to be like, oh my God, this video's too long. And other people are like, oh, I wish this video was longer, right? And so, like, everyone's going to have their specific things that they like or dislike. And I can't accommodate all of those things because nobody can. Some people love the swearing, right? Some people like it better when I swear. Some people like it when I don't. I can't accommodate both people, right? You have to be the one who adapts. If you like something and it's good for you, it benefits you, then shut the fuck up and find a way to contribute and give back, because that's what we all have to do, right? We all have to give back for what we receive that's good. And that's what I'm doing here in terms of the things that I've gotten that I'm giving back, right? And so, I don't expect less from you than the stuff that I have to do. I hope people, like I said, I hope the younger generation evolves beyond what I've been able to achieve. That's what every good spiritual person wants. And when you do that, when you go through the shit that I went through and you evolve spiritually, you can make content without swearing, right? Like, so you can, do something your way. This is, particularly bad time in history. But humans have been conditioned to be takers, especially people who grew up in America, Western culture, where we are consumers. Like, our system is built on our, being hoarders and consuming as much as possible. Like, they want Americans to be shopping all the time. They want us to be consuming as much as possible because the economy needs to look like it's growing. And so if Americans became moderate and only bought what they needed, the economy would, the difference, it's already so bad, the ratio to economic growth, the debt ratio to economic growth ratio is already so bad. But if Americans weren't hyper consumers, it would be horrific. It would be like, there'd be no point to it. And then all these businesses would fail. All these businesses are predicated on you spending as much money as possible on whatever junky shit. And then this is a global issue with economy, the Chinese products and these products from these other countries, these, industrialized countries where they're viewed as workers, right? The people grow up with this idea of being proud to contribute in terms of work. And our contribution is in terms of consuming. So they need workers and we need consumers, right? They need consumers here, we need workers there, right? That kind of thing. And so people all think that, you've been told the customer's always right. And as long as you're spending money, you have these, you need to do it. So go out there and hoard and spend money on shit you don't need. And people get this sense that their value is more than it is, right? Because people who are just takers and consumers are horrible. They don't give anything back. They don't think that they have to give anything back. And that's why all these relationships fail. People can't stay married, can't stay in friendships because everyone's taken all the time. And people want to be, fed, and they don't feed, right? They want to take, but they don't give. So, this comment's an indication of that. And I see it all the time, right? Well, I like what you're doing here, but you could make it better for me if you did this. I don't give a shit about you. I'm not here to make it better for you. If you want something, you have to pay for it, right? There's some more comments here. Let me just go through them. Blueberry budget, BB equals BD also equals BBB, which, looks like a 666. I usually don't do the numerology stuff. So when she said she needed a blueberry budget, and that, sounds like she was implicating Bibi, it'll be interesting to see what she says, the wife. On behalf of not watching your videos because they keep shadow banning you, on my behalf of not watching your videos, they keep shadow banning you. I have to search you every time to watch your videos. Not until the Charlie thing happened have your videos been consistently popping up for me. But my last video didn't. My last video on the Charlie thing, let me see if So what he's saying is that he has to search for my videos, but you really don't have to do that if you, I have to talk about my merch too. I meant to do that. I'll do that at the beginning of my next video. But, so the videos, they got 6,000. The first video got 8,700 views. The next one got 5,700. These are all up. I used to get 15, 20,000 views per video, and then I got some in the 100,000s and the millions. But then YouTube changed their policies, right? And so they don't recommend me to new people, and they don't give notifications to my existing viewers. Then 683, 700, 700, and 7,000, 6,800, and 7,800, and 8,800, and then 9,000, and then 4,625, and my video from yesterday's got 2,028 to 200. And it's still, I won't put this video up till later tonight. But what I'm saying is they seem to be recommending my videos, and then they stopped. And so, or people just are less interested in the subject, which, this video today and the video yesterday were kind of like the best videos. So, there's that. But, my videos were down to some under 2,000 views, which was, they've just been slowly going down, and then there was a little bit of a pop, and we'll see what that, happens with this. This story is far from over because it's now it's morphing with the Jimmy Kimmel thing. So the censorship is now another avenue for this, and Trump pushing for that as a part of his martial law agenda. And this person wrote, Paul, I agree with you 100%. Since I started Gratefullness meditation, I can deal with difficult people around me without having them now. Without hating them now. Great commentaries, brother. So, people who do the meditation, have a separate channel that's, the free channel for the meditation. I often get comments like that. I usually don't say this. Somebody wrote, your views are disgusting. And somebody said, right, this video should have way more views. My views are disgusting. You get people who say shit like that. I think I have another comment like this here. You've been extremely misled by dabbling in the meditation you promote and the leftist unhinged thinking. You don't need to brag that you blocked me. I unsubbed over a year ago. Then why are you here? These people who just want to undermine your confidence. The first comment I covered like this, it was a wonderfully evil comment. And so my videos were originally about my family and I learning how to homestead. It had the cows, my kids milking the cows and all this stuff. And then I started to cover truther stuff. And the person said, I've been watching your videos forever. And it's really funny to watch your mental decline into the world of conspiracy theories. I'm laughing at your going crazy. That's the person saying, I'm laughing at you going crazy with your conspiracy theories. But I just worry about your kids. I mean, when somebody's trying to stop you from, undermine your confidence, and like this happens all the time. Like, people who just do that with no context. This person's a Trumper. They're upset that I'm saying shit that they can't handle because deep down they know it's true. And so they leave a little shitty comment and they're like, don't brag about banning me. Yeah, I don't brag about banning people. I do it, and I get some, it's not unpleasant, but if more people, 2 hours and 23 seconds into this video, the Charlie Kirk operation is about, it's not about good versus evil. If people understood this simple fact, so the person timestamped it, society would be in the position to crush the controllers. The system, not merely the elite, is the problem. There's always another elite controller waiting in the wings. The system itself must fall, and it will. It's unsustainable. When the collapse happens, my question is, will we be ready? Well, we won't be, because we're not prepared for it. We're very low-functioning people that we know how to do one thing and be a part of the system. But what this person must be talking about is when I say, the most we could do is take the system down. But you can't make the system good, because the system isn't supposed to be good. It's a debt-based economic system that is predicated on just the material side of existence and excluding the spiritual. And it's very competitive and individualistic, and its focus is on developing the ego and not the soul. And so, this is a system that we think of as this is how life is. But it's a very small part of, there's people throughout history that live like we live now, but they're usually royal people, people who grow up with these privileges. And, they're kings and queens that there's always somebody waiting to stab them in the back and kill their whole family. And so they live with these privileges, but they are walking the tightrope of, keeping their power and being invaded by another country. And the country comes in and the first thing they do is kill the other royal family, right? So if you're living high on the hog as a royal family, maybe for a generation or two, and then some, Attila the Hun comes in, or one of these motherfuckers, right? Some other, or in England or wherever it is. And they come in, they beat the shit out of your army, and they come into your castle. And the first thing they do is get rid of your bloodline, so there's not any claim to the throne. What happened to the royal family in Russia, right? It's supposed to be like this Anastasia girl was, I was telling my wife about the spiritual Anastasia. Anastasia, I think they pronounce it. This woman that this guy found out in the woods, and she's supposed to be a spiritual prophet. But there's the Anastasia girl that's supposed to have escaped, and she has the Russian bloodline. They have these things, these stories, but what they would do is kill you. So, people didn't have this security that the mass amount of people who have king-like privileges. Because, back in the olden days, the kings had, a much lesser version of running water and heated water. Not the kind of fucking structures we have. And they didn't have cars and airplanes and, those kind of things. So, these societies that we've built recently are an anomaly, and people just don't live like it. And the way they used to live is a lot harder. And this is one of the things I realized when I homesteaded, that it's a hard adjustment. It feels good, it's natural, but it's almost impossible for people to adjust back to that way of life if the system goes tits up altogether. And so, like, that's what we're, enduring right now, and we'll see how it goes. Anyways, let me wrap this one up here.